Well, hello, hello. Time for some more drawing. Um, so in my last tutorial, we were looking at how to put a body onto your constructed shapes using the shapes and building on shapes. And of course, I was showing you how important it is for you to understand the roundness of the characters so that you get a sense of dimension when you draw. So these tutorials are really designed to help you to start to think about the three dimensions in your drawing. All too often, what I see a lot today with new artists, particularly people in the animation business, yeah, or even just artists in general, is that there is not the training, in my opinion, to understand how to draw dimensionally and how to understand dimensions. You need to be able to do this because you can't rely on everything else or other things to help you to get over. You know, if you're tracing a photograph or you're working over somebody else's artwork or you're letting AI create, you're not thinking artistically. You're just not. And you need to learn the basics to draw, to create, to develop. You just do. It makes you a much more competent artist. It also gives you advantages, really, because if you understand how to construct something from the ground up, then all of the things that can help you to do your job better will make more sense to you and you'll be able to be using them more responsibly. Sadly, today, what I see too much of is people are interested in getting things done quickly. They just want to get to the point. Show me how to do this. I want to be able to draw like you in 5 minutes. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You need to develop yourself as an artist. You need to go through the stages. There are not shortcuts to being a competent artist, and you're going to work at it all your life. And there's going to be some people, like I said, who are going to be better at it, or they just have a more adept ability. You just keep working. You're going to keep working at it. Like I said, I'm in my 60s now. It will actually be 70 this year, and I'm still considering myself a student of art. I'm still working, and I'm not saying that you got to get to this point to be good. What I'm saying is that you need to work on the skills, work on developing the skills as an artist. Don't look for shortcuts. Don't Shortcuts in life in general are a joke. They don't work. Okay? When you know how to do basic things in a certain order or pattern, then you're going to have that knowledge and you'll be able to use it effectively. And I believe this is true in pretty much everything. I'm an old school guy. I was born in the 50s. We had to learn basics in everything. And the only reason that most of us who are good at what we do now, is because of that, because we spent the time to learn. And I'm saying this specifically to a lot of you young artists who are starting out. You get on YouTube and I see this, and this is going to help me do this, and this is going to help me do that, and I can cut some corners here and I can cut some corners there. Fine. And you and your work is going to look like everybody else doing the same thing you're doing. And you're tracing the same things and you're going about it the same way. What I'm talking about is learning basics and structures so that you can come up with something out of your head and make it effective. What's up here? Your imagination, your ability to create is a unique thing, you know? And you want to be able to, that's what you want to share with the world. That's what you want to be good at. And every single one of you out there has something unique and different. But if you don't learn these basics, if you don't take the time, and I'm just talking about one aspect of something here, I'm just talking about three-dimensional perception and cartooning. There's so much more around this. But I'm just saying that it's very important for you to know these things and take the time. Take the time. You won't be sorry, okay? All right, well, I'll get off my soapbox on that right now. You know, I care enough to say it because it's important for you to get better as an artist, and that's not going to happen if you try to take a shortcut to these things. There's just some things you're just going to have to take the time to learn. Okay, all right, all right. Well, anyways, so I was talking about working with shapes and stuff, and I was saying that when you when you're drawing on a two-dimensional surface, you are drawing on a flat surface. So when you're trying to make something look dimensional, you're having to put lines around a shape to say what these things are. And every shape you add, like, you know, every time you add a shape, you add something sticking out of here, you add something sticking over here, you add something sticking over here. These are all lines on a flat surface. And so what I was saying was, well, how do you create the illusion of these things not just being lines on a flat surface, but starting to lift them up off of the surface? And so what I was saying was, well, then you draw lines that go around the forms by drawing lines that traverse the forms, that go around the forms. It starts to create this illusion that this form is rounded. And you can see this, like I said, just by putting lines around. See, now this looks like a series of oval shapes stuck to a big ball shape. But a minute ago, it just was a bunch of circles. And the minute that you're able to put forms to make these forms seem rounded, then you're able to draw details on that form that could then also be a part of the round shape. And you start seeing the form differently. You don't just see it as a circle, you start seeing it as a ball shape or some type of shape. Now, it might not just be a ball shape, but you start seeing it as a shape. You start imagining it as a shape. And this is where you start to make this thing look like a cartoon. You start drawing lines around things. You start putting a definitive edge on something. Like, where does that stop, and where does that starts to become a form? Because once again, everything, these are all things that are lines, supposedly on what should be just lines on paper, you know, flat lines on a flat sheet of paper. But in reality, is that it looks kind of like this is dimensional, doesn't it? It stops looking like something that is of a flat shape. It starts to look like it's dimensional. Now, this is a weird looking thing, but you see what I mean. Say, there's an illusion here of this thing being dimensional. And you see what I mean. Now, once again, to further illustrate this, if you're looking at and let's see here, let me do this. I'm going to make an ellipse here. If you're, say, looking at a shape that's literally a ball, like this, okay, so you would think, okay, that's a circle, right? What would make that look like a dimensional ball? Well, one thing that would make it look that way would be shading it. So let's say we shade it. Okay. So let's say we put a shadow on one side of the ball, like this. So let's say we put a shadow over here. Let's see, maybe I'll make that a little lighter. Go backwards. Maybe pick a lighter gray. All right, so yeah, by putting that shadow there, you see, it's an illusion. Then we put another shadow on the ground here. This shadow, let's see, maybe make this one a little darker. Okay. So what do we have now? Now we have something that looks dimensional. Why? Now it looks this way because of the light hitting the ball, right? The light is hitting the ball on one side. Okay. The light is coming in this direction. Okay. So the light's coming from that direction to hit the ball, and it creates a shadow on the ground, like that. There's your shadow on the ground. But see, when you're drawing a cartoon character or any type of character with lines, you don't have the luxury of putting shadows on the ground. And that's because, especially with animated characters or simple cartoon characters, you are, well, with an animated character, because you're drawing it over and over and over to move it around, you don't always have the luxury of putting a shadow on something in order to show that it has dimension. You really have to rely on how it's drawn. Okay, how do you draw it to make it look dimensional? And so the way you achieve that is by putting lines on the surface. So like even on this, even on this ball shape, if I were to put a line around the ball, okay, probably would look like that, wouldn't it? So a line this way, say a line this way. And why am I drawing it that way? Because the ball has shape, right? It's round. It's not a flat line. But see, once again, you're drawing on a flat surface. So you're trying to create the illusion of it being round. In the business of doing cartoons, we don't have the luxury of putting a shadow on the ground. In fact, we're encouraged not to put shadows on the character. What we are encouraged to do is to create the character in the drawing so that it looks like it's rounded. Okay. And I had mentioned before that one of the things that can kind of help you with this is to maybe go out and get yourself some action figures that you can draw. You can literally hold up and draw and turn. Because what that does then is that helps you to start to see details and how they might look differently. And we'll get into that. I will at some point. We're not going to do that today, but we'll get into some point where I'll bring out a toy or a sculpture or something and we'll draw from it, or I'll draw from it. And this is one of the ways that at the animation studios where we do characters, they will sometimes make these little three-dimensional models that we can use as a reference that we can draw from, because it's literally a three-dimensional model. But we need to be able to think about the character, excuse me, as being dimensional. So today, a lot of cartoon characters are designed to be flat. They're designed to be flat because it's easier to deal with them. You don't have to draw dimensionally to draw something flat. But I personally think that it limits you tremendously if you don't know how to draw things and give them some dimension. You know, you don't want to be stuck in that place. Okay, you want to be able to draw something dimensionally. You know, if I'm going to draw a character I would rather be able to make my character feel like he has dimension, even if I don't have the luxury of drawing shadows. I don't need to draw the shadows to make the character seem to be dimensional in space. It comes from my understanding of where to put the lines on the page based on the shapes that I'm drawing or that I'm imagining to give the character a sense of depth, or a sense of roundness, or a sense of believability. And all of that comes from my understanding of construction. You know, when you see someone drawing a character and the character appears to have some dimension and it has construction and it has solidity, that comes from their understanding of dimension, of creating spaces, of creating reality through creating spaces that seem real. It's a combination of that. It's a combination of the lines that are being put down on the page. It's an understanding of where to put those lines to create foreshortening. It's an understanding of what lines, how to use line to create a certain effect. You know, you're trying to create an effect with the way you put the lines down. So that then, it's really your understanding of what's the shapes you're trying. What are you trying to do? See, I'll see something in my head, an image in my head, but because I understand dimension, I can create a sense of it being rounded. And this character is not a character that I was looking at anyway. I'm just making this up. But you can see that this character has a certain level of three-dimensionality to it. There's a certain quality of it being believable without me having to put shading on it. I can put shading on it, and the shading will make it even more believable. But I'm not relying on the shading in order for it to be believable. And you see this in the most sophisticated characters that are created. So what you want to do as an artist is you want to get to a point where where you're able to create get these shapes down on paper that you can then build on. You know, because like I said, everything you're doing when you're drawing on a shape is very similar to like clay. You're constantly adding forms, and you're building on those forms. You know, every shape you add, you want to think of that. That's a new shape, and you put lines on that shape so that it starts to have dimension. Say, I think if you were drawing something, you know, out of your head, you know, when you get to a point where you understand what it is I'm doing here, completely really understand it, you're not going to have to draw the lines around the character like I'm doing. I'm drawing these lines around the character because I want you to get to really see how these things operate as shapes, how it starts to make sense as a shape, and how that everything you draw, fingers and everything, they all are going to have shapes. Everything's going to have shape, down to your little finger. Everything needs to be drawn as a shape and traversed as a shape, so that when you put it all together, you see it makes sense. These shapes are, see, if you're looking at the lines and how they go around something, you start to see it as forms. You know, when it's just a shape, circle, this, or when it's just flat like this, you don't necessarily see those as forms. You see them as shapes, flat shapes on a sheet of paper, but you don't see them as forms. Whereas with this one in the front here, it is like forms. The illusion is already there before you put any detail on it. So you want to build your characters this way. You want to start out with the blue drawing. You want to build a character with forms. You start with lines, and then you start to see. You start with lines. You create a shape, or what you consider to be a shape on the page, but then you put lines around it to give it the illusion of being a three-dimensional shape, and then you build your character on top of that. You draw directly on top of it, and that way it helps you to start to see, more effectively the dimension, and it starts to make sense to you. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna stop here. I think it's important. I guess, like I said, I think it's important um, to practice this. But see, realistically, you're going to have to. I think maybe one of the things that might be really helpful to you at times is you need to look. We'll look at characters that exist, and at some point in the future, I probably will do this. I will say maybe take certain existing cartoon characters that you're familiar with and draw them and show you where the shapes are and how they work. And then that'll also help you to see how these things, how you need to be thinking artistically to create the re the effectiveness of the character looking a certain way, looking dimensional. When you look at Mickey Mouse, why does he look the way he looks? Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, Popeye, whoever it is. All of these characters will have some kind of believable three-dimensional shape that the artist that created them intended. Now, you do have some characters that are intentionally flat, that they're intentionally designed to be flat. Like for instance, to give you an example, a character, say, like, and I'm just going to draw this out of my head. I don't know how to write. I'm going to get it. Someone like Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown is designed to be flat. He's a flatly designed character. Probably need to get his head a little bit more rounded. Yeah, maybe that's a little better. The amazing abilities of the of the what of the computer. Let's see here. Computer really can do some amazing things. I think maybe is here. Maybe we could bring it down a little bit. I think on the nose, if I don't miss my guess, I think its nose is a little bit. I don't know. I might be getting the nose wrong. But anyways, a character like Charlie Brown is intentionally designed to be a flatly designed character. I think he's got the. I mean, some characters are designed this way. They're designed flat. Things about this and that are not exactly right. Anyways, something like that. I believe I'm probably getting this wrong. I'll have to come back and find the drawing of Charlie Brown that's right. Anyway, but you see, you get what I'm saying. Some characters are designed flat. They're designed to be flat. That is the way they're conceived as characters. You know, um, and that's okay. You know, nothing wrong with that. If the character is intended to be a flat design, great. You know, if it's intended to be to be flat, but you know, like I said, I think a lot of characters today, in my opinion, are intentionally flat because people don't know how to draw well. And the only reason why they don't know how to draw well is because they don't practice drawing well. Nobody's talking about this stuff. It's important if you want to be a competent artist, then you're going to have to, you know, do stuff. And I'm not saying I have all the answers to this, but I am saying that you do need to develop yourself as an artist. Um, but if you're doing something, like I said, if you're doing something that's got a lot more going on, a character that's clearly dimensional, then you're going to have to understand three dimensions, and you're going to have to understand how to build your character in dimensions and shapes, and then you're going to have to understand where to put the details and how to make them look correct for your character, and that's just the way it works. So, anyways, my purpose is to really help you to get your head around that so that you can do it well, because it's just going to help you. Because, like I said, the better your ability to capture dimensions and in your creativity in creating something, the more believable your drawing is going to be, the more believable your characters are going to be. And it also takes you to a place of competency as an artist where you feel a lot better about what you're able to create. You can create something that's a lot more realistic, a lot more believable, dimensional, whatever. But if you're limited and you're tracing photographs and you're working over other cartoons, and you are at the mercy of somebody else doing something. You got to go search the internet and find something that's close to what you want to do, and then you got to make something. Well, everybody's doing that. You can say, "Oh, well, what about AI?" Fine, fine. Then don't be creative. Then don't be unique. Don't develop yourself in a unique way. Your ability as an artist sets you apart from anybody else in the world. Nobody else can do what you can do. But if you don't give yourself the ability, or if you don't give yourself the knowledge, if you don't train this ability that you have, and then you know you're cheating yourself out of the ability to communicate what you have in your heart and in your mind, and you're limiting yourself to some way of cutting corners to achieve something. Now, once again, hey, you do what you want, okay? All I'm doing here is trying to give you a stronger base so that when you do come at being an artist and creating your own stuff, you're just going to be better at it. That's all, okay? And people will recognize that when they see your artwork. They'll go, "Oh, well, this person must know how to draw. This person has, you know, you might not be the very best at it. You might be pretty good at it. You might be okay, but at least you'll be competent. At least you have some knowledge of what you're doing." Okay. All right. Anyways, I do hope this was helpful to you, and that I hope it adds something to what you're able to do as an artist. I will be talking more about this same subject and giving you some more examples. And there you go. All right. Have a beautiful day. Hope that was helpful. And anyway, have a good day. And remember, Jesus is Lord.